How your nervous system tells you where to draw the line. Have you ever said yes and immediately wished you had said no? Have you ever agreed to something, stayed in a conversation, allowed someone's behavior, or taken on more responsibility, and only afterward realized I didn't actually want to do that? And then maybe came the irritation, the resentment, the exhaustion, the anger. But what if the real problem happened much earlier? What if your body had already told you, that's enough? I don't want this. This is too much. Stop, but you didn't recognize the signal. Or maybe you recognized it and overrode it. Today we're going to change that because instead of waiting until you're angry enough to know you've reached your limit, I'm going to show you how to begin mapping your body's signals so you can recognize your boundaries earlier. This is called somatic boundary mapping, and it can completely change the way you set boundaries. Welcome back to Reboot with Reygan. Your body may know your boundary before your mind does. Most people think setting a boundary starts with language, but you learn to say no. I don't want to. That's not okay with me. I need some space. And these skills are important, but there's a step that comes before the words. You have to recognize that a boundary is needed. And this is where many people struggle because the conscious mind can rationalize almost anything. You say to yourself, it's not that serious. They're probably stressed. I don't want to be rude. I'll deal with it later. It's easier just to do it. Maybe I'm overreacting. Meanwhile, your body is already responding. Your jaw tightens, your stomach contracts, your chest gets hot, your shoulders rise, your breathing changes, you feel restless, you want to move away, you suddenly feel tired, or perhaps you become very quiet. And those sensations may be the earliest information that you have that something isn't working for you. Now, this is important. Not every uncomfortable sensation means someone crossed my boundary. Your body responds to many things. So we're not going to teach you to automatically interpret every sensation as a warning. Instead, we're going to become curious. Think of your body as a data collection system. A sensation appears, and rather than immediately acting on it, you investigate. Ask yourself, what happened right before I felt this? Who was I with? What was being asked of me? What did I want to say? What did I actually say? And here's an especially powerful question. What did I want to do that I didn't allow myself to do? Because that question can reveal a boundary you haven't consciously acknowledged. Think about a recent situation where you eventually became frustrated with someone. Don't start with the moment you exploded, go backward. What happened 5 minutes earlier? What happened 30 minutes earlier? What happened at the very beginning? There may have been a moment when your body first changed. Maybe someone asked you for something. You felt a tiny contraction in your stomach. You said yes. Then they asked for something else. Your jaw tightened and you agreed again. They continued. Your chest became tight and eventually you exploded. The explosion wasn't necessarily where the boundary began. It may have been where the ignored boundary finally became impossible to ignore. That's why learning your early signals matters. The earlier you recognize the signal, the less intensity you need to communicate the boundary. Your body has a personal boundary signature. Your signals are going to be unique to you. For some people, the jaw may be associated with, I'm tolerating something I don't want to tolerate. For someone else, the stomach may be associated with, I don't want to agree to this. Another person might experience chest pressure and understand I'm feeling pressured, or throat tightening, indicating there's something I want to say, but I'm holding it back. Or shoulders tightening means I'm taking on something that isn't mine. Or a sudden fatigue, meaning I'm giving more than I have available. The important thing is not to decide what a sensation means in advance. The important thing is to observe your patterns. Over time, you can begin creating your own personal somatic dictionary, and that dictionary becomes incredibly useful because eventually you may notice every time my stomach does this, I'm about to agree to something I don't actually want. That's valuable information. The 3 stages of a boundary. Here's a simple way to think about this. Most boundaries have 3 stages. Stage 1 is the signal. Something happens, your body responds, you notice a sensation. This is a yellow light. Not necessarily stop everything, but pay attention. Stage 2 is the internal truth. Now ask, what do I actually want? Do I want to continue? Do I want to leave? Do I want more time? Do I want to change the terms? Do I want to say no? Do I want them to stop? This is where you separate your authentic preference from the automatic response you've been conditioned to give. Stage 3, the boundary. Now you communicate or act on that information, and the boundary doesn't have to be dramatic. It can be incredibly simple. I can't do that. I'm not available. I need some time to think about it. Please don't speak to me that way. I'm going to end this conversation. No, I'm not comfortable with that. Sometimes the boundary is verbal, and sometimes the boundary is behavioral. Sometimes the boundary is simply removing yourself from a situation. The important part is that your action becomes consistent with what your body and conscious mind have identified as your limit. Now, here's where the subconscious comes into this. If you've repeatedly learned that saying no creates conflict, your body can give you the signal, and your subconscious can immediately override it. You feel the contraction and the programming says, don't make them mad. You feel the pressure to just do it. You feel resentment. You're being selfish. You feel exhausted. You should be able to handle this. This is why recognizing your somatic signal is only half of the process. You also have to notice what thought immediately follows the sensation, because that thought may be the conditioning that keeps you from setting the boundary. So let's practice. You can pause this video and get a piece of paper. At the top, write somatic boundary mapping. Now divide the page into 3 sections. Number 1 will be what happened. Think of a recent situation where you felt irritated, pressured, resentful, overwhelmed, or angry. Write down what happened, keep it factual. The second column, what did your body do? Go back to the earliest moment you can remember of that scenario that you wrote down in section 1. What did you feel? Write it down. For example, your jaw tightened, your chest became hot, your stomach dropped, your breathing changed, shoulders became tense, felt suddenly exhausted. Don't judge the sensation, just record it. And the third column, what did I want to do? This is the most important part. Ask yourself, if I had trusted myself in that exact moment, what would I have done? It's often the first thought or feeling that comes to mind, and you ignored it or overrode it. So write that down. Would you have said no? Would you have walked away? Asked them to stop? Asked for more time? That answer may reveal where the boundary actually was. Now create your personal somatic dictionary. Do this repeatedly. Over time, you'll start seeing patterns. You might discover jaw tension means that I'm tolerating too much. Stomach tightening, I don't want to agree. Sudden exhaustion may translate into I've exceeded my capacity. Your map may look completely different, but that's exactly the point. This isn't about memorizing someone else's list of body sensations. It's about learning your body's language. And eventually something changes. You stop waiting for your body to become overwhelmed before you listen. You begin catching the signal earlier. Instead of discomfort to override, to resentment, to anger, to explosion, you begin creating sensation, awareness, choice, boundary. That's a completely different pattern. And notice, we didn't have to make you more aggressive. We didn't have to make you less compassionate. We didn't have to make you suspicious of everyone. We simply made you more aware of yourself. That's what healthy boundaries actually require. What about people who don't respect the boundary? Now let's take this one step further. Your body can tell you where your boundary is, but another person doesn't have to agree with your boundary for it to exist. And keep in mind that not everyone has personal boundaries. And therefore, if someone doesn't have personal boundaries, it's almost impossible for them to be able to recognize and respect yours. So they'll continue pushing. But it's important to understand you don't need someone else to validate, yes, that's a reasonable limit. Your responsibility is to identify what you're willing and unwilling to participate in. Their responsibility is how they respond to that information. And this is where your somatic map becomes practical, because if you repeatedly notice, every time I interact with this person, my body tells me I'm exceeding my limit. That's information. You don't necessarily need to label the person. You don't need to diagnose them. You don't need to create a story about their intentions. You simply need to pay attention to the pattern. What happens in me when I'm in this situation? That information matters. And now let's take what you've learned and rehearse it. Close your eyes. If you're somewhere safe to do so, take a slow breath. Bring to mind a situation where you recently struggled to set a boundary. Don't choose something overwhelming, choose something manageable. Now imagine the situation happening again, but this time, notice your body at the very first signal. Maybe your stomach tightens, maybe your jaw changes, maybe your chest contracts. Whatever it is, notice it. And instead of overriding it, pause. Take a deep breath and ask yourself, what do I need here? Let the answer come. Now imagine yourself responding. Maybe you say, no, I can't do that. Maybe you say, I need to think about it. Or maybe you simply say, that's not something I'm willing to do. See yourself saying it calmly. You don't need to justify yourself endlessly. You don't need to become angry. You don't need to convince the other person that your boundary is legitimate. Simply experience yourself recognizing your limit and responding accordingly. Now notice your body. What does it feel like when you remain connected to yourself while holding the boundary? Take another breath and mentally rehearse it one more time. Signal, awareness, choice, boundary. This is how you begin teaching your nervous system that you don't have to wait until you're overwhelmed to protect yourself. This is the real reboot. Not how do I become better at saying no, but how quickly can I recognize that I need to say no? Because your boundary doesn't necessarily begin with the word. It may begin as a sensation, a subtle tightening, a shift in your breathing, a contraction, a feeling of pressure, a desire to pull away, a sudden loss of energy. And when you repeatedly learn to recognize that signal instead of overriding it, you develop something incredibly valuable: self-trust. You begin trusting yourself to notice, trusting yourself to pause, trusting yourself to decide, and trusting yourself to act. So here's your practice. For the next week, don't try to become better at setting boundaries. Instead, become a boundary detective. When you notice irritation, resentment, pressure, exhaustion, anger, or something similar, go backward. Ask yourself, when did my body first tell me something was wrong for me? Then ask, what did I want to do at that moment? And finally, what stopped me from doing it? That final question is where you're likely to find the conditioning. And once you can see the pattern, you can change it. Your body isn't there to make decisions for you. It's giving you information. Your mind can interpret it. Your conscious awareness can decide what it means, and you can choose what you do with that information. That's the difference between being controlled by a reaction and becoming conscious of the signal that comes before it. Your body may already know where your line is. The question is, are you listening early enough to draw it? I'm Reygan. This is Reboot with Reygan, and I'll see you in the next one. Namaste. Namaste.